My brother used my foster son to smuggle drugs, threatening to expose him. I set him up and got him arrested. That was 3 months ago. Today, he's begging me not to testify against him in court. Look, I never thought I'd be writing this story, but here I am at 2 a.m. with a Bud Light in my hand, trying to make sense of everything that went down. Some of y'all might remember my previous posts, but for those just tuning in, buckle up because this ride gets wild. So I've been fostering kids for about 5 years now. Started after my divorce when I realized my 3-bedroom house felt way too empty. The system's messed up, no cap, but sometimes you get these amazing kids who just need someone to believe in them. That's how I met Marcus. 15 years old, been bounced around more homes than a ping pong ball. But this kid had something special. Smart as heck, funny, and despite everything he'd been through, still had this hope in his eyes. Marcus had been with me for about 8 months when my brother Danny started coming around more often. Now Danny and we've always had this complicated relationship. He's my older brother by 3 years, and growing up he was always the one getting into trouble while I was the goody two-shoes trying to keep my head down. After high school, I went straight into social work while Danny bounced between odd jobs and what he called entrepreneurial ventures, which was basically code for sketchy stuff that walked the line of legal. But family's family, right? So when Danny started showing up at my place every weekend, bringing Marcus little gifts, new Nike sneakers, the latest iPhone, gift cards to GameStop, I thought maybe he was finally growing up. Maybe seeing me with Marcus made him want to be a better uncle figure. Boy, was I wrong. The first red flag should have been when Marcus started getting nervous around Danny. This kid who'd survived more trauma than most adults was suddenly jumpy whenever my brother walked in the room. But Danny, he had this way of making everything seem normal, you know? Always cracking jokes. Always having some story about work, always ready with an explanation for everything. Update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the support on this post. I know some of you are asking why I didn't see the signs earlier. Trust me, I've been beating myself up about that for months. But sometimes when you're in the situation, things that seem obvious from the outside just don't click. Anyway, things are about to get way worse before they get better. Should I have confronted Danny earlier? It all started unraveling on a Tuesday night in March. I came home from work early because I had a migraine that felt like someone was using a jackhammer inside my skull. The house was supposed to be empty. Marcus had basketball practice until 6, and Danny wasn't supposed to be there at all. But when I pulled into my driveway, I heard voices coming from the garage. I grabbed some Advil from my Chevy's glove compartment and walked around back, thinking maybe Marcus had gotten out of practice early. What I saw through the garage window made my blood run cold. Danny had Marcus backed up against my workbench, and he was talking in this low, urgent voice that I'd never heard him use before. Marcus looked terrified, not just scared, but that deep, soul-crushing fear that kids get when they know they're trapped. I couldn't hear everything they were saying, but I caught enough. Danny was talking about packages and routes and how Marcus was perfect for this because nobody suspects a kid. Then I heard the part that made me want to throw up. If you don't do this, I'll make sure everyone knows about what happened at your last foster home. How long do you think you'll last here once she finds out what kind of kid you really are? Marcus was crying. This tough 15-year-old who'd never shed a tear in front of me was sobbing, and my brother, my own flesh and blood, was standing. They're manipulating him with whatever trauma he'd dug up from the kid's past. I backed away from that window feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get my keys out to unlock the front door. I sat in my living room for 20 minutes just staring at the wall, trying to process what I'd witnessed. Part of me wanted to storm into that garage and beat the living daylights out of Danny, but I knew that would just make things worse for Marcus. When they finally came inside, both of them acting like nothing had happened, I had to bite my tongue, so hard I tasted blood. Danny stayed for dinner, joking around like always, while Marcus barely touched his food and avoided eye contact with both of us. After Danny left, I tried talking to Marcus, but he just mumbled something about being tired and locked himself in his room. That night, I did something I never thought I'd do. I started investigating my own brother. I created a fake Facebook account and started following his friends, checking out his social media, even driving by places I knew he hung out. What I found made me sick to my stomach. Danny wasn't just dealing drugs. He was running a whole operation using kids, mostly foster kids, runaways, kids from broken homes who didn't have anyone looking out for them. He'd find their weak spots, their secrets, their fears, and use them like weapons. The stuff he had Marcus doing started small, just carrying backpacks, from one place to another, meeting people at McDonald's parking lots, simple stuff that looked innocent enough, but it was escalating. I found out through one of his buddies' Instagram stories that Danny was planning to have Marcus make bigger runs, carrying more serious weight, the kind of stuff that would get a 15-year-old tried as an adult if he got caught. Update. A lot of you are asking how I gathered evidence without tipping Danny off. It wasn't easy, and I made some mistakes along the way that almost blew everything. I had to be super careful because Marcus was already scared, and I couldn't risk Danny following through on his threats. The next part is where I probably should have just called the cops, but I needed to be absolutely sure. Was I stupid for trying to handle this myself? I knew I needed solid evidence before I could do anything, so I started what I can only describe as the most stressful month of my life. I installed security cameras around my house, told Marcus and Danny they were for break-ins in the neighborhood. I started recording conversations on my phone whenever Danny was around. I even followed them a few times when Danny picked Marcus up for what he called uncle-nephew bonding time. The hardest part was watching Marcus slowly fall apart. This confident, funny kid became quiet and withdrawn. His grades started slipping. He stopped hanging out with friends. Some nights I'd hear him crying through his bedroom wall, and it took everything I had not to just march over to Danny's apartment and end this whole thing right there, but I needed enough evidence to make sure Danny went away for a long time. I needed to protect not just Marcus, but all the other kids Danny was exploiting. So I kept playing along, pretending I didn't know anything, smiling and making small talk while my brother destroyed the kid I'd grown to love like my own son. The breaking point came on a Saturday in April. Danny showed up around noon with this nervous energy, pacing around my kitchen, checking his phone every 5 seconds. He told Marcus they needed to make a quick trip to meet some friends, but this time something was different. Danny seemed more agitated, more desperate, and the backpack he handed Marcus was heavier than usual. I could tell by the way Marcus struggled to lift it. After they left, I made a decision that probably saved Marcus's life. I called in a favor from my buddy Jake, who works for the sheriff's department. Told him I needed an off-the-books patrol car to follow my brother because I suspected he was putting a kid in danger. Jake didn't ask too many questions. We'd known each other since high school, and he trusted my judgment. We followed Danny's beat-up Honda Civic to a warehouse district about 20 minutes outside town, the kind of place where nobody asks questions and everybody minds their own business. Jake called for backup while we watched Danny and Marcus meet with 3 guys who looked like they could bench press a Honda. That's when everything went sideways. One of the guys opened Marcus's backpack and started yelling. Apparently the weight was wrong or the count was off or something. I couldn't hear the details, but I could see Danny getting defensive and Marcus just standing there looking terrified. Then, one of the guys grabbed Marcus by the arm, not rough but firm enough to make it clear he wasn't asking. That's when Jake called it in as an emergency and we moved in with backup arriving right behind us. The bust was beautiful, no lie. 5 arrests, including Danny, and enough evidence to put together a case that would make a prosecutor's year. They found drugs, money, phones with text messages, and most importantly, they found a notebook in Danny's car with names, ages, and personal information about at least 12 different kids he was using as runners. Marcus spent 4 hours giving his statement to the police. Kid was shaking the whole time, but he told them everything. Every threat Danny had made, every run he'd forced him to do, every manipulation tactic my brother had used. By the time we left the station, it was almost midnight, and Marcus looked like he'd aged 5 years in one day. Update. The trial starts next week, and Danny's lawyer has been calling me non-stop trying to get me to convince Marcus not to testify. They're offering plea deals, community service, even offering to pay for Marcus's college if we just let family handle family. But after what I've learned about the other kids Danny hurt, there's no way I'm backing down. The question is, am I prepared for what testifying against my own brother is going to do to my family? Some of you have been through similar situations. How do you live with that choice? The months that followed were honestly harder than the day of the bust itself. Danny made bail after 2 weeks, and that's when the real pressure started. Not just from him, but from my whole family. My mom calling me crying, saying I was destroying the family over a misunderstanding. My dad showing up at my door, demanding to know how I could betray blood like that. Even my sister, who lives 3 states away, calling to tell me I was making a mistake that would haunt me forever. But you know what haunted me? The stories that came out during the investigation. 12 kids, ages 13 to 17, all being used by Danny and his crew. Kids from broken homes, kids in foster care, kids who'd already been failed by every adult they'd ever trusted. One girl, barely 14, had been carrying packages for Danny for almost 2 years. Another boy had been arrested 3 times before. Anyone figured out he was being coerced. Marcus started therapy twice a week. Some days were good. He'd come home from school with stories about friends or teachers, almost like his old self. Other days were rough. He'd have nightmares about Danny coming back, or he'd shut down completely when anything reminded him of what happened. But slowly, day by day, I watched this amazing kid start to heal. The hardest call came 3 weeks ago. Danny, calling from county jail, crying on the phone. Not the manipulative tears he'd used on Marcus, but real, desperate sobbing. His lawyer had told him that with the evidence they had, plus the testimony from all the kids, he was looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. His only shot at a reduced sentence was if the victims refused to testify, or if family members vouched for his character. Please, he kept saying. I'm your brother. I made mistakes, but I'm still family. Don't let them destroy my life over this. I listened to him cry for 10 minutes. Part of me, the part that remembered building forts in our backyard when we were kids, the part that remembered him teaching me to ride a bike, the part that still loved my big brother despite everything, wanted to help him. But then I looked at Marcus doing homework at the kitchen table, still jumping every time the phone rang, and I knew what I had to do. Danny, I said, you destroyed your own life the minute you decided to hurt kids, and you didn't just hurt Marcus. You hurt 12 children who trusted you. I can't fix that. I won't fix that. The trial starts Monday. Marcus is going to testify, and so am I. Danny's lawyer has made it pretty clear that our testimony is going to be the nail in his coffin. The prosecutor thinks with our statements, plus all the physical evidence, Danny's looking at the full 20 years. My family isn't speaking to me anymore. My mom sent back my Christmas card unopened. My dad told people at church that I'm not his daughter anymore. It hurts more than I expected losing them like this. But every morning when Marcus comes down for breakfast with a smile on his face, when he talks about college plans, when he brings friends over and acts like a normal 15-year-old should act, I know I made the right choice. The other kids are doing better too. The prosecutor's office connected us with some of the other families, and we formed this weird little support group. Parents and guardians who had to make the same impossible choice between family loyalty and protecting children. It helps, knowing I'm not alone in this. Last night, Marcus asked me if I regretted anything about how this all played out. I thought about it for a long time before answering. Do I regret losing my family? Absolutely. Do I regret the sleepless nights, the stress, the constant worry about whether I'm doing the right thing? Of course. But do I regret protecting him and those other kids? Do I regret making sure Danny can't hurt anyone else? Not for a single second. Marcus is going to age out of foster care in a few years, but we're already talking about adoption. This kid who came to me broken and scared has become the best part of my life. He's talking about studying social work in college, wants to help other kids who've been through what he went through. If that's not proof that I made the right choice, I don't know what is. So that's my story. In 3 days, I'm going to walk into that courtroom and testify against my own brother. It's going to be the hardest thing I've ever done, but I'm going to do it anyway. Because sometimes protecting the people you love means making choices that break your heart. And honestly, I'm okay with that. Marcus is safe, those other kids are safe, and Danny won't be able to hurt anyone else for a very long time. My family might never forgive me, but I can live with that. What I couldn't live with is knowing I had the chance to stop him and chose not to. Family isn't just about blood. It's about the people you choose to protect, the people you choose to fight for, the people you choose to love even when it's hard. Marcus is my family now, and I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over to keep him safe. The trial starts Monday. Wish us luck.